This is the intro where we say something funny before the video begins.
Holy crap, we haven't done one of these roundups since our intro looked like this. You've waited 4 years for us to do it again, so here it is, a roundup of all the games we played at PAX West 2024 in no particular order.
I went with this time, and I brought all my friends! Yay! And then layer like 5 yays on top.
Fraymakers! We'll start with a game that had me doing a complete 720 on how I feel about it.
Seems excessive.
Fraymakers is yet another one of these Smash clones that uses indie characters to attempt to capture the same feeling Smash gives us, but adds in some extras and such that make it different and interesting. My tone for those two accentuated words may throw you, but I'm genuinely surprised how much I liked this game. Yes, it controls, plays, and feels nearly identical to Smash. If that's all you're here for, go on to the next game now. But it also adds in support characters that can be activated via a button that are other reference characters.
Like assist trophies that everyone has that they alone activate. Like Leia from Crosscode. Or Leia from Crosscode. Oh, or Leia from Crosscode.
There are others.
Leia is the only one that matters!
She did help me kick your ass pretty hard, so I'll agree. Anyway, this is Smash with indie characters, fun, interesting, in early access. Bought it on the show floor. Very excited to see who they officially add next. There's also community tools to add your own characters in. It's cool. Check it out.
Tears of Metal!
This one is a roguelike /alike/like light that pits you in a Dynasty Warriors type combat environment. There's you, several generals you pick to aid you, and dozens of enemies on screen to ruin. Use your basic combo, your heavy attacks, and a mix of the two to become a death blender. Find upgrades in boxes on the field and after each battle to prepare for the boss fight. I was lucky enough to get upgrades that made all of my attacks cause explosions, so enemies and bosses never got a chance to attack, let alone live. Felt good. The controls are well designed and the combat felt like it had oomph. I know what we think of roguelike /alike/like/lights, but I'll probably end up checking this one out, knowing me. You should too. Zenless Zone Zero! I know what you're all thinking, but I feel differently about this game now. It may have handlebars in suspicious places, and have the world feeling some type of way about police outfits, but this game also has excellent combat. It's slick, stylish, it's over the top by 1 mile and 7 feet, and most of all, it's easy. I haven't downloaded it myself yet, but I am heavily considering it. I had never touched this before, but hot damn, that combat, man. Oof, it's fun to play. Plus, it's tapping one button to attack, another to dodge, another to switch characters, and a fourth to do your one single ability.
So it's a video game. Wow, is that all this genre has to do to cross onto your wish list? It's a free-to-play game you can sink all your dollars and time into. Have fun, James and the rest of ya.
Yeast. Memoire, the Oath and Felghana. Ah, you thought this would be Yeast 10 Nordics. Ha! You thought! Anyway, this game is hard.
You did die 4 times to the only boss of the demo and had to knock the difficulty down from normal to easy, which really only seemed to change the damage the boss did, not the damage you did or the ferocity of their attacks. Very cool there are 5 difficulty settings, disappointing they only seem to be boss and enemy damage multipliers.
Agreed, normal is too hard for me. Anyway, the game. I didn't play enough of it to get a good feel for it. The demo was really only the boss, then you were shooed away for others waiting to try it. There was a stamp quest thing going on around the booth, so they really didn't want people sticking around. My closest comparison to this game is definitely Nayuta Boundless Trails. The combat, platforming, movement, jumps, look, and feel are all extremely similar. Given that they're from the same developer, this should shock none of you. This is a Yeast game though, so I've already pre-ordered it and I'm very excited to try it for the first time.
Chainstaff! This one is cool. Visceral, guttural, brutal, and cool. The Metal Slug influences can be seen and felt immediately. To add a layer atop that, you have a Chainstaff, which is this extendable, chargeable, launchable, spear-like weapon that kills most things in one hit, extends upward to lift heavy stuff, and can grow longer if you collect segments of it. You also use it to cross gaps. It's a versatile extension of the mechanics in a very Metal Slug-looking game. Kill things with that or your gun, then take on larger-than-life bosses to collect spores. Then check out the other terrifying characters and their animations, because that will weird you out way more than having to throw your Chainstaff through several monstrous teeth to reach its salivating, pulsating, undulating, tonsil-esque core.
It's also fun.
Alterium Shift. This is probably the most Andy's gonna like this game I've ever seen. Alterium is a traditional RPG with pixel art and turn-based battles, and had plenty of story and world building to show during its 30-minute long demo.
Long demo.
The very beginning has you pick one of 3 characters, I chose the archer, and proceed from there. Notably, the combat is very traditional, but also has a timeline at the top of the screen. It didn't seem to get used to complicate anything in the demo, but I am definitely intrigued by what it might imply. Do late game attacks and spells come with the caveat of delaying your turn? Can you delay your foe's turn? I'm super into this game, even if what was in the demo was definitely the start of the game and was thus pretty normal. I'm hoping things can get complicated swiftly, and that maybe some sound effects can be added in too, since much of the demo was pretty quiet.
Also a big fan, also chose the archer. I chased a chicken off the edge of a cliff and it slowly descended while stuck in the side of said cliff. I entered and exited a house real fast to reset the chicken, but it will sit with me as one of the funniest parts of the demo. Also, the combat was nice and the game just looks fucking gorgeous. Big fan of this artistic direction.
Fallen Aces!
I played the demo quite a while ago before the
stamina bar
was added and liked it quite a lot. Big thumbs up from your boy James!
This game is stylish. It's a first-person shooter, but made for an era back when those were called Doom-likes. The story is about a private detective evading the mob and has a very noir-like presentation. There are even comic book cutscenes with proper printing errors! The combat of the demo mostly has you pick up random objects from around the room and stowing them away in your pocket and bashing opponents with them as needed. If you're unarmed, you've got your trusty fists, while mob members have weak little firearms. There's also a stamina bar that James didn't like, but I didn't pay much attention to it. It was a cool looking game, and I certainly enjoyed being able to kick down doors.
NES Champions World Edition!
This one is already out, so most of you probably know what this is. For the 4 or 5 of you that have no idea, here's our impressions anyway. Because we were shown very little of it and still don't entirely understand what it is, NES Champions World Champions Edition is a collection of quickfire tasks for you and other players to complete in several NES games. Much like Mario Party, you have moments to learn the controls, even less to understand what's going on, seconds to complete the task, and a lifetime to be outpaced by someone who clearly plays these games in their sleep.
But you won one, didn't you?
Of 4, James. Of 4. The stranger you, Chris, and I were with won the other 3.
Maybe he played them when they were released?
We still don't really know what this game is, and our impression has finished. We will now move on. PlayDate.
This had a booth?
A big one. I admit I've been curious about the Playdate ever since it was revealed. As someone who remembers the era of Flash games hosted on Armor Games and Newgrounds, the Playdate looked like a very small, very concentrated dose of that time in video game history. Whether or not it actually is, I wasn't able to determine, because my time using the Playdate was pretty uncomfortable. The device itself is extremely small and has barely enough room for both hands to hold the device comfortably. The edges of the console are quite rigid, bordering on sharp, so they dig right into your hands. Also, the viewing angle was painfully awkward. I kept having to tilt the entire object upward and away from my face in order to properly see the contrast of the black and white graphics. Speaking of the graphics, what did I play? Well, the Playdate on the show floor had a list of things to select. Something that bugged me, and maybe I'm alone in this, was the long loading screens when a game was starting up. While using a handheld game console, I was already finding myself instinctively looking at my phone. Okay, but back to the games. I played something called Bullfrog Deluxe, something akin to Wario's Woods, where you play a character inside a room that steadily fills up with falling blocks. In Bullfrog, you have to pull on blocks using your tongue and make matches while avoiding getting crushed. Real quick about the Playdate as a console. It has a D-pad, 2 buttons, and a home button. It actually has fewer buttons than a Game Boy. But I bring this up because Bullfrog emphasizes aiming your tongue diagonally to pull blocks that are above you while still standing far enough away to not get crushed. After all, if you only pull laterally, the block is already on the ground, and pulling blocks down kills you. But the D-pad on the Playdate is completely incapable of allowing comfortable diagonals. It's simply too big, too rigid, and too clicky, so I wasn't able to adequately play Bullfrog. After that, I tried Mars After Midnight. This game takes advantage of one of the Playdate's most notable features, the spinning crank on the side. Now, the game was extremely difficult to understand, and I had no idea what was happening or why. There was some narrative about a Cyclops support group or something, but I did not see how to move forward. But something I noticed anytime I had to use the crank and then use a button is that putting away the crank is quite finicky. The subtle, almost immeasurable rotation caused by trying to shift the crank back into its holster causes the game to react as though it were being rotated intentionally. So I'd have to manually readjust the crank and then get back to work trying to put it away again, while trying my absolute best to not move it. After that, I tried Under the Castle. This was another game I simply didn't understand. I mean, there's a D-pad and only 2 buttons, so surely it should be easy to play, right? But I could not figure out how to deal damage to enemies or what their movement patterns were. All I could do was open my inventory, which was full of one-time use spells, and select those spells. So I ended up just avoiding enemies for as long as I could until I died. So I'm not really curious about the Playdate anymore. I found the hardware itself uncomfortable to hold, and even its main gimmick is difficult to use precisely. And of the 3 games I tried, after sitting through the lengthy load times, I enjoyed none of them. All that for the price of a Switch Lite. If you're into the Playdate, please enjoy it. I hope the pioneers of this odd new hardware help to make something better in the future, but it's just not for me.
Dragon Ball Sparking Zero! Guys! Dragon Ball games are finally good again!
What a way to begin, James. Anyway, I can safely say this is the first actual gameplay I've seen of this game that wasn't cut to shreds in a trailer or immediately shoved aside to do another character intro. I could punch things! I mean, I probably landed at least one punch. I didn't understand the controls whatsoever. I was immediately overpowered. The demo lets you have 3 characters against a lone Vegeta controlled by a computer. I was outclassed. That wasn't fun.
I had fun. There's going to be a lot of characters, a lot of punching, a lot of Dragon Ball they can milk until the thing is raw and dry, and a lot of complaints about the online leaderboards which matter so little. Either way, it feels like a good Tenkaichi game again, and that makes me excited to play this game.
Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Rita's Rewind!
Andy and I are not huge fans of beat-em-up games. Few have grabbed us, fewer have held our attention. But when you place a nostalgic media fill bucket full of Power Rangers and dump it on a beat-em-up, now we're interested. This demo saw up to 4 players.
This is a 5-player game, wildly enough.
Fight through 2 levels and then a boss fight with Goldar. It was awesome, has the regular dynamics of a beat-em-up game, and features several power-ups, secrets, and colors of characters.
It's unfortunate that we couldn't experience any of the awesome-looking levels that were in the trailers, but the writer nearby assured us that those levels were going to be as great as they looked, which makes it even more disappointing! Either way, this is a day 1 buy for us, and it should be for you too. What did you think, Chris, who has just been sitting there staring at a Power Rangers mural for the last 4 days?
Imagine if Luigi and Peach had a kid.
Saeko Giantess dating simulator.
I know what you're thinking, James.
I'm Kazuma.
And I'm going to kindly ask you to keep it to yourself, because the cultured are speaking right now. Saeko was a demo in the very, very back corner of the show floor, with a suspiciously low amount of light and not many people around. So I figured, this is where I belong. Right I was. Though it describes itself as a dating sim, as far as I can tell, there's only one dateable character, being Saeko herself. The story told in the demo is that Saeko goes about her typical life as a university student, and anytime she feels like it, she shrinks people and places them in her desk drawer. Everyone in the drawer has 2 stats, being health and appeal. There's a scene in the demo that causes a character's appeal to sharply rise, and a following scene explains that being appealing to Saeko, who is the size of a tower, is actually a bad thing. And so the full game is probably about balancing the health and appeal of as many people in the drawer as possible, while also trying to appease Saeko. Honestly, this idea is both incredibly disturbing and a bit intriguing. I mean, I can imagine a scenario where the game's stats back me into a corner and I simply have to sacrifice some drawer dwellers just to make Saeko smile. And from the outside looking in, it appears like I'd do anything to make Saeko happy, but in reality, I'm just trying to save my own skin.
Rivals of Aether 2. Did you like Rivals of Aether 1? Did you like all the characters they added and the DLC and all the systems you could play it on? Well, it's back and more 3D than ever. I figured the pixelated art style was part of the appeal of Rivals, but no, it wants to be as close to Smash as other Smash clones do. Oh well. Rivals 2 is more Rivals of Aether, but this time there's a grab button, you can grab ledges, and there's flashier windscreens. It's more Rivals that loses its individuality as it does its best to stand shoulder to shoulder with Smash Bros.
Bow Lady makes no sense.
No sense.
Hyper Light Breaker!
Everyone sit down. Andy's about to have unfettered access to words he wants to say about Hyper Light Breaker. Anecdotes and sloppy vocabulary included. Get ready, I'll just sit here with my loud snacks and my pre-diarrhea squishy pants and we'll be all good.
Thank you, James. This game here was the entire reason I went to the Mix event several blocks away from PAX, that's Media Indie Exchange. I even got a press badge using my Twitch streaming credentials so I could go in an hour earlier, and also not have any time to grab food. But hey, I got to play Hyper Light Breaker before the general population, so that means I'm cooler than you! The guy presenting the demo even immortalized the occasion by posting some photos of me in my sweet E3 Nintendo jacket. There's also this hair waterfall over there. So the demo itself. You start out in the central hub area, the hotel as the in-game text translates to, and you can interact with the Proto Breaker to view various aspects of your loadout. You can do things like swap your weapons, change your little robot companion, and purchase permanent upgrades using an in-game currency. But since this was just a demo, I didn't have anything beyond the basics, so I was just messing with menus, which were big squares with thin white outlines aligned into grids. It reminded me a little bit of Breath of the Wild or Tears of the Kingdom's menus. There were also white silhouettes and explanatory text for items, rather than the brief video animations that Drifter had. To properly move out into the world, you leave the hotel, walk down the main street, and finally reach a glowing platform. It'll let you adjust your loadout, which once again is just the basics in the demo, before heading off into the overgrowth. Doing so causes an entirely new, randomly generated open world to be created behind a somewhat lengthy loading screen. I ended up in the approximate southeast corner of the map on a small island surrounded by water, with the other nearby landmasses being cliffs. The guy at the booth told me how to use the hoverboard to skate over water, which is good since your character can't swim. The hoverboard kinda bugged me because you hold down the dash button to activate it, but you hold it for 2 entire seconds before the board appears. It's a lot like how running works in Hyrule Warriors, where dodging can segue directly into running, but Breaker's way of doing it is super slow. Once I got off that little island, I could properly fight enemies, equipped with the basic sword and rapid fire rifle. The sword slash is rapid and sweeping, and felt like it packed a punch. The gun felt useful too, and I noticed that, while using a controller, the aiming reticle gently locked on enemies. But I did also notice that I didn't understand how the ammo worked. Once I ran out of ammo, I'd stop using the gun for a while, but then realized later I had more ammo again without knowing why. I didn't manually reload or see a reload animation, and I didn't seem to pick up anything that looked like ammo. I don't think ammo works the same way as Drifter. There's no recharging meter, but instead a more standard number/number display. As I was killing enemies and destroying boxes, there was lots of stuff to pick up, and I didn't really know what any of it did. Some of it healed me, but since this was just a short-form demo, I didn't really get to see what any of the various pickups were to be used for. Maybe some of it was ammo? At one point I did die and went back to the hub world, and after standing on the teleporter, I went back to the same world instead of it being randomly generated again. The enemies seemed to have respawned, but the booth attendant stated certain points of progress would be maintained, such as defeated bosses and major pickups. That definitely makes the multitudinous worlds of Breaker less disposable. I'm still scratching my head on Breaker though. The game is an open-world roguelike, which are 2 genres I typically don't enjoy and intentionally avoid, despite some slip-ups, but I figure if anyone can pull this off, it may as well be Heart Machine. And after all, I played this by myself. But Breaker is meant to be cooperative multiplayer, James, and there were some hints toward extra players in the menus. The demo at the mix was pretty intense and difficult using only the starting layout, so I'm wondering how quickly you can find extra stuff and customize your playstyle. And after doing that, how soon can you find the currency that buys permanent upgrades? Hyper Light Breaker is meant to launch in early access next year, and is planned to launch as a full game about a year after that. So what I played at the mix is probably going to be unrecognizable from what's eventually considered the 1.0 release. For that alone, I'm excited, and pretty jazzed that I got to play it before any kind of public launch.
Star Wars Hunters!
This one is the Star Wars answer to Overwatch and that whole genre. Free to play, difficult to earn in-game currency, skins you'll have to pay for, characters with similar abilities. It's the whole bland, overblown shtick with a Star Wars cover. Enjoy.
Popucom!
Holy cow! Y'all ready for my new favorite game? I know that at first glance y'all probably think this looks a bit like Splatoon, but I promise you it's nothing like it. It's a lot closer to if Puyo Puyo got a 3D action platformer. Popucom, or Popucom, is a co-op game where you have to cooperate, James, to complete levels and defeat enemies and bosses. The whole idea is that you gotta match your color with the obstacle. In general, matching colors is for the best and will in some way lead to progress. You use your gun, which fires extremely infrequently by the way, to shoot out your color, and your shield, which can adjust its angle to block obstacles of the same color or be used as a platform for the other player. As much fun as the regular levels in the demo were, the big dragon boss was incredible. The 2 players fly through the air chasing down a dragon made of balls of different colors, and you have to shoot the dragon's body so that you can cause a match 3 effect and make those body segments disappear. When the dragon finally shrinks too small, it's defeated. All the while, it shoots color-coded projectiles at you, and you gotta defend against them. It's a wild ride of colors, coordination, and cooperation, James.
Also, it's fun.
AntonBlast!
I'm worried about AntonBlast. Yeah, singular internet person says they're worried about a successful indie game before it releases.
Internet person who donated to the Kickstarter.
Yes, but I had actual fun playing the debut demo. The thing we played at PAX West was not that. The effects were entirely too flashy and in your way. Levels revolve around you doing them so fast you can't learn them, which is really difficult because you have to travel through portions of each level backward after activating Happy Hour a la Wario Land 4. Finally, the background travel now feels forced because there's simply too much shit in your way. Foreground elements that need to be traveled around using background travel are in your way so much you can't see what you're doing or even where you are.
The PAX demo was a beginner level and a challenge level. I didn't even try the challenge level.
I did. It made use of none of the fun mechanics the game actually has and instead went for Mega Man-esque platforms that appear and disappear, so your mistakes lead to a lot of lost progress. It was infuriating. I'm worried about AntonBlast in so much that it has molded itself into something I won't like playing. Not something I regret donating to, but something I won't recommend others try. Something I'll put down and never talk about again. I don't see it changing course in 2 months, but I hope my impressions of the new demo level and the demo challenge level are completely upended when I have the game in my hands.
The Legend of Zelda: Echoes of Wisdom.
Wisdom.
Echoes of Wisdom was the first game we played when we touched down on the PAX West 2024 show floor. A completely capped game in less than 30 seconds, and we were in that line. It was the first thing we did.
Echoes of Wisdom was the last game we played when we were exiting the PAX West 2024 show floor. A line that capped immediately after we entered it, and we were in that line. It was the last thing we did.
While not immediately hostile toward Echoes, I'm not entirely excited for it. I'm not a huge fan of top-down Zelda games and never have been. There's a certain air of why didn't you know you could do that seems to permeate the puzzles and boss fights that always keeps me at arm's length because I don't know those things. How could I? This was never more evident to me than when the nearby enforcers informed me of certain tips and tricks that got me around obstacles. How could I have possibly known some of those things? Many see this as wow, creative, but I personally see it and meet it with an ire of wow, that feels like it could have been a bit more telegraphed. Thus, my lack of excitement. But Andy's excited.
I am excited! We both played this, that's why he went first, because in the strange alphabet he created for this list, J comes before A.
Yeah!
Anyway, the first time I played, I was just fooling around. The demo starts you off as Zelda in a prison cell surrounded by Hyrulean knights, and you have to make your escape using that echo power. You learn a handful of things to echo while making your escape, things like a table, a bed, a ceramic jar, a rock, and a decorative potted plant. So with all these objects in hand and NPCs abound, I was just creating stuff and throwing them at people's faces. Playing the demo, much of the game is about platforming. There will be areas with varying heights and depths, and Zelda can use a dedicated jump button, which is the bottom B button this time, by the way, to hop around the place. If there's a gap in space, you can use your echoes in a number of ways, such as making a bridge or stacking up a staircase. Once you're out of the prison dungeon, you're on a beach area, and the demo has you fight Zols. And this right here made me very intrigued, because in this top-down Zelda game, you can Z-target your foe and pivot around that point. I still can't believe Z-targeting is in a top-down Zelda game. How's it going to be used in the full game? Am I even gonna be using it myself, what with me being used to typical top-down Zelda controls? The second time I played the demo, there was a 15-minute timer to be clear, I did what I could to blaze through what I already knew and get to some new stuff. I ended up surprising the booth enforcer by finding things they apparently hadn't seen anyone else get. It all makes me, once again, wonder about the full game.
Astro Bot.
This game releases really soon, and we're buying it. But whatever, it had a demo at PAX. We were only given about 2 minutes each to play, and from what little I could tell, Astro himself moves and feels very similar to the Clank-only segments in most Ratchet & Clank games. He even has a similar big fist basic attack. Also, the PS5 controller was almost constantly vibrating. Elsewise, the game was colorful and cute. There wasn't exactly enough to get an impression of. I guess my main concern is how long the game is, with it being a big old physical disc release rather than a pack-in title pre-installed on the system. But I do think that, if it is decently long, Astro Bot will have plenty of variety to keep things fresh and enjoyable throughout.
I wish the demo were longer because 2 minutes was not enough to get an impression of Astro Bot. It's going to be fun, sure, but will that fun spread over the entire game, or was just that one portion of sandbox area fun? We won't know until we fork over $60 for that sweet, sweet second PS5 exclusive.
Oh yeah, after Bloodborne.
Super Mario Party Jamboree.
Unfortunately, this demo was only minigames and no board movement whatsoever. And weirdly enough, none of the minigames on display had motion controls. But it was still fun. There was a minigame where cubic sandwiches were falling from the sky forever and you had to avoid getting crushed. There was a 2 vs 2 minigame where you had to cut an irregularly shaped steak as perfectly in half as possible. And James and I nailed a 50-50 split.
Yeah, buddies!
Not much else to say, I guess. It's Mario Party, there's minigames. I really wish the demo showed board movement somehow, since that's arguably the most important part, but I guess that would have taken too much time. Either way though, James and I are buying this game and enshrining it in our hearts, just as with the rest of the series.
You forgot to mention the strategy one, where you were presented several block patterns in an effort to build a bridge across lava. If you pick the same pattern as another player, neither of you moved. You forgot to mention I won that one, with my chaotic strategy of fuck it.
Yes, James? How could I forget the single win you eked out with your signature strategy of, I have no idea how to beat Andy, so I will enact chaos. And it paid off. Again. And you haven't reminded me of it 7 times already. How could I possibly forget?
Can't wait to play it when it comes out.
Demon Spore.
In this cooperative game, you and up to 3 friends must travel through a set of rooms in a giant lab to find the exit. But you're not alone. Spreading from one side of the map is some sort of infection represented by evil tentacles that you have to fight using your axe, fire extinguishers that can be refilled at any extinguisher location, and 1 single other gun per player.
James had a flamethrower, so he was our tank.
And we won!
The developer helped us a significant amount. As you move toward the exit, you can acquire better armor, rescue other scientists, lock rooms from infection, which we almost messed up, and throw things. James's favorite thing.
My favorite thing.
At the end of it, the tentacles will have either taken you or you used your door locks with just enough brain power to escape, which we did. It's a simple game, good for 1 brother, 1 stranger, and 1 developer to all coalesce and complete. Pokemon. Did you know Pokemon is still, like, a thing? With expansions and games and cards? I may have been living under a hyperlight breaker-sized rock for the last 14 months, but no one told me Pokemon was so huge. James and I demoed a physical set of decks, and I demoed a mock battle in the Scarlet and Violet game. Given my joke remarks at the beginning of my diatribe, you can probably guess, even with the nearby admin's help, how this went for me.
I also have no idea how the Pokemon card game works, but I am vaguely aware of type advantages. For the card game, we were each presented a 30-card deck and meant to battle each other until one of us won. I won on technicality and we both walked away confused, but confused with prizes. They gave us pins, new decks, deck boxes, and a memory we'll carry forever.
I came back later to see what the other half of the Pokemon stand was for. It was for Scarlet and Violet, double Pokemon battles. I didn't know anyone's name. I didn't know any of the moves. I hope my opponent enjoyed the easy win. I walked away uninformed, but uninformed with prizes! Also a nice microfiber cloth with type advantages and weaknesses on it. I don't know how to read it. Can't wait until this is obsolete when the next games release.
Reynatis.
Reynatis is a special case of I want this, but there are simply too many other games coming out around it to donate attention to it. And I think it's probably for good reason. We demoted it from a need to a want a while ago as it introduced the Twiwi crossover and the trailers looked more and more confused. Also, this demo featured combat that was simply waiting to be struck, so you could press and hold R1 to fill a parry circle, then mashing circle so you could beat down the enemy that attacked you until they were ready to strike you again. It is unintuitive and heavily relies on the parry system.
The demo started off in some city with a portal in an alley leading you into a mystical forest. Down here is where combat would start. You fight by activating an attack, which causes you to change form, and also causes a meter at the bottom of the screen to start depleting over time. Once it runs out, whether you continue attacking or not, you change back to your normal self and can no longer attack, at least until that meter fills back up some. You can fill it back up just by waiting or by perfect dodging enemy attacks. It's a cycle of diving in for offense and retreating to prep for more offense. This guerrilla-style combat sorta reminds me of a more complex, more modernized Secret of Mana, what with its stamina meter. I actually mentioned this to the booth enforcer, and they didn't know what I was talking about, so maybe I'm wrong. But they also mentioned that the full game has a party of characters, while the demo was just one fella, so you'll be able to switch to whoever has a full offense meter to keep the gameplay momentum going. But honestly, to me, that sounds a bit cumbersome. If I want to play a game where I can constantly attack, I'll play just about any other game. The whole hang back to rest mechanic sounds interesting, I guess, but not really my speed. The Transylvania Adventure of Simon Quest! I saw trailers of this game floating around online, so I thought I'd try it. it's not my cup of tea. It being styled after NES Castlevania games, even borrowing from the names, is not just a reference. The jump physics are extremely similar in that when you jump, you are committed to that jump and cannot change course. The staircases have a very specific etiquette, and it's just as confusing as it always was. The whip has a slight delay to it, and it has to be learned before you're even vaguely effective in combat. One thing I did really appreciate was the lighting, because you could destroy light sources and the game would dynamically shift the palettes of objects to make them appear darker. Unfortunately, if you destroy too many light sources, the screen will become completely black, and you have no idea what to do anymore. In the age of indie games looking backward for inspiration, it's kinda cool to see a game emulate the past so closely, warts and all. But I guess I am a bit spoiled by modern features like decent jump controls.
Kamikaze Lassplanes.
James, I can hear you thinking things again.
I'm still Kazuma.
So I respectfully tell you to let the cultured have the floor again. Anyway, Lassplanes here is a visual novel type game with shmup sections. I don't really know how one relates to the other. The lasses here are pilots, I think. Or maybe I'm the pilot since I'm controlling the plane. And we're fighting in a war against someone. And when we're done killing all of those people, we do not even once reconcile the inhumanity of our actions, and instead get into a wacky hijinks of walking into a co-ed public bath. Despite my, interest in what's shown here, I just don't like shmup games, even on the lighter difficulty presented by the demo. Not that it was too difficult or whatever, I've just never found it entertaining. And the following section where the player character accidentally stumbles into a nude coworker clumsily covering herself with a towel that's too small, I don't know. If you're into that, more power to you, really and truly, but I'll stick with my giant desk drawer, thank you.
Sacrifire.
This game is very Grandia-like, but with some key differences. For one thing, it's very pretty, and you have much more direct control over your player character. In Sacrifire, your capabilities are determined by various meters, such as action points and magic points, but absolutely everything stops moving if you stop moving. This lets you collect your thoughts by just sitting back and observing. You don't recharge anything, and can surf menus in peace. It's a little like Superhot in that sense. Unfortunately, I found myself a bit confused by enemy capabilities. Maybe because the demo seemed to be taking place a little deep into the game, what with all the fire everywhere, but I noticed that some attacks would have red indicators on the floor to warn you, but other attacks wouldn't, so I'd rush in and end up taking surprise damage. I was also having some trouble with the combat menus, which were similar to the Mana series ring menus, and I've never really liked those. I should mention though, that the Grandia comparison I made earlier stops with the combat system, as far as the demo showed me anyway. The overworld felt similar to something like, I don't know, a 2D platformer in 3D space? Donkey Kong Country Returns or something, especially since you could move toward and away from the screen. I'm always up for an RPG with unique combat. I'll certainly be keeping an eye on Sacrifire, especially if it releases on Switch.
Rough and the Riverside.
So, this game initially blew me away. It's a 3D platformer with a slightly off-putting art style and slippery controls, but the main gimmick is extremely cool. The player can aim a reticle over a texture in the environment, like dirt, water, stone, so forth, and then take it and highlight some other object to rewrite that object's texture. You can make a wooden crate into a stone block, or a river into a dirt ravine. The game's physics then observe that change. Making a wooden crate into stone will make it both heavy and unable to break. It's extremely brain-tickling. Unfortunately, this was only used a couple times in the demo. After that, it was just a 3D platformer with odd controls, one-hit death respawns, and awkward combat hitboxes. And as I went, I noticed pretty frequently that there was geometry in the level that looked like it was placed there for a reason, and as though I could jump on it, but would have a repulsive magnetic bubble of invisibleness around it. There were even some extremely staircase-looking rocks in one area that I just couldn't climb. It all piled together when the demo got to a gauntlet, where the player has to go through one challenge after another to get to the peak of a pyramid. The challenges amount to standing in a gap to avoid a rolling rock, jumping between platforms to not fall into lava, and waiting for spikes to recede to move forward. In all of these, if you take damage once, you start the whole thing over. I managed to finish it, but I gotta be honest, it's not why I was playing anymore. I was really waiting to do more texture painting puzzles.
Also, it looked fun.
Tethergeist. This is a puzzle platformer, where you use your intangible spirit and a finite inventory of different items to navigate various challenges. Recalling your spirit back into your body will cause your body to shoot toward your spirit's position, hence the tether geist. Depending on the items you pick up and store, your spirit recalling your body will cause different reactions with the obstacles in the level. For example, one item would cause the body to shoot upward as though you just jumped, effectively a double jump. Another item would cause a mushroom in the environment to fling the player in a direction, depending on where the player and the mushroom are in relation to one another. However, different mushrooms will have a different fling effect. The last level in the demo actually had some proper head-scratching puzzles and misdirects, with the level providing 6 pickups, but the player only able to carry 4, and a mushroom near the end being completely unnecessary. You gotta look ahead and plot the order in which you use the items, and then execute the platforming challenge. I'm really into it. It looks like it'll be really difficult, and I noticed the demo didn't have any combat. I'm up for a strictly puzzle platformer.
YARS Rising!
Very pretty, and fully voiced. YARS Rising stars a group of hackers trying to take down wealthy corporations via sneaky Metroidvania espionage. Gameplay in the demo was pretty slow going, but controls were very immediate and responsive. There's also an upgrade system somewhat similar to Kid Icarus Uprising or Arcrise Fantasia, wherein you fit the upgrades into a grid, and I like that a lot. Much of the demo involved being sneaky, avoiding line of sight of guards and preventing your character from making too much noise by walking slowly, and had a tiny bit of combat, which was just mashing a shoot button to make your hand blast projectiles. Much like most of the people I see talking about YARS Rising, I don't really know what to think about the game from just trailers. After playing the demo, it felt pretty slow, probably to encourage the player to be stealthy and careful. But hey, it's a run and gun platformer by Way Forward, and I've had good experiences with those before. If nothing else, it'll be really pretty and have extremely good voice acting, so I'll fling money at that.
Yeast 10 Nordics.
My patience has been rewarded in the best of ways. Yeast 10 is going to be excellent. This demo only let you fight a few enemies than a weak boss, but the controls, even on the PS5, were excellent. Guarding is back. That's important. Also, that thing where you automatically dodge obstacles and projectiles while running like in Metal Gear Rising is here. That's a nice addition. Switching between characters is easy. There's more special moves and abilities than in previous games, and everything is just as flashy as you want a Yeast game to be. It's gonna be good. I am so glad I got to play this demo so many times at PAX West. The observers at the booth even started to recognize me after the second time. Highly recommend checking this out before it releases in October. Better yet, pre-order it for you, your friend, your cat, your couch, and your virtual boy. Very, very excited for this game. Big excitement.
Still a huge shame that this game only has those 2 playable characters, and yet it's not co-op. Wouldn't that have made more sense?
More sense? I don't know. More fun? Sure. But that's where Steam's modding community comes in. Come on guys, you can do it. Just like you did for Yeast 8. Thank you for watching a recap of all the games we played at PAX West this year. Felt good to be back on the show floor, playing games, getting pushed and bumped into oblivion, and realizing just how much I miss my bed at the end of the day. If you went to PAX and played any of these demos, let us know what you thought in the comments. Thank you so much, and see you soon. Here's Andy.
Thank you so much, and see you soon.
That was horrible. Horrible.
Let me give it again.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Horrible.
Oh.
Horrible.
All right, I want to see it again.
Horrible.